Welcome back to F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Today we're going to talk about the key issues, kind of like the themes of the story, and some of the motifs that you might notice as you read throughout. In particular, the key issues or themes that I'm going to look at today are success, morals, and the hope. So when we start off with success, we start looking at the modern ideals of the American dream, which would be to gather wealth, to have a good job, to own land. Well, Gatsby uses this as a corrupt form of the American dream. He acquires the wealth that he thinks he needs in order to win back his first love, Daisy. Now, the energy that might have gone into the pursuit of noble goals has been channeled into the pursuit of power and pleasure. And so we get this very showy place with a lot of lavish parties that Gatsby doesn't even care about. And it's a fundamentally empty form of success. Now, Gatsby hadn't been in love with Daisy for a long while, and he tried every way that money could buy to try to satisfy his love and lust for Daisy. Every party that he could throw every weekend in order to try and attract her and her friends to his house. Even trying so far as to have the same house, a lavish house, right across the way from her own. Now, instead of confronting her with his feelings, he tried to get her attention by throwing big parties with the high hopes that she might possibly show up. It never happens. And so he eventually finds one of her good friends who talks to Daisy's cousin, who holds a tea party so he can just happen in on it. I mean, he could have just confronted her with his feelings. Gatsby's actually a very lonesome and unhappy man who lives in this grand house and having extravagant parties, but he's not making friends. He's not going out and enjoying the parties. He's just concentrating on his lust for Daisy and nothing else. He does all of this for one woman who was initially impressed with his flagrant show of wealth, but that's not why she fell in love with him in the first place. And of course, Daisy was extremely disenchanted after she found out exactly how Gatsby had acquired his fortune. So when we think of the idea of your characters having traditional morals and values, there's almost none there. The characters in this novel live for money. They're controlled by their money. And their love and happiness seems to be quite fleeting. Everything is just for show. Everything is shallow. Everything is in the moment. Now, love and happiness cannot be bought no matter how much money was spent. We do see, even though these are wealthy characters in society, the ideals of love and happiness seem to elude all of them. Now, Tom and Daisy are married. They even have a child, but they both are still committing adultery against one another. Even though we have Tom in Chapter 7 standing up in defense of marriage and the family values, he does not believe in them one bit. They tried to find happiness with their lovers, but the risk of changing their lifestyles was just not worth it. Tom is not going to leave Daisy out from a wealthy background in order to go and be with Myrtle Wilson, another married woman and from the lower class. Daisy's not going to leave Tom because in 1920s society, she would have to leave her child behind. She'd probably have to leave her wealth behind in order to go be with Gatsby, whose wealth could possibly be fleeting. So again, when we saw that idea in success where happiness cannot be bought, happiness in morals and values cannot be found. Gatsby is the epitome of hope throughout just about all of this story. So tie your theme of hope to Gatsby. He buys a house in West Egg across the bay by Daisy in the hopes that he'd win her back. Every night he can look across the bay to the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. Now, he expected her to turn up at one of his parties, and when she didn't, he has to ask her best friend Jordan, to ask cousin Nick, to ask Daisy over. I mean, there's a lot of hope going on here, a lot of luck going on here. Now, our author Fitzgerald stresses the need for hope and dreams to give meaning and purpose to a man's efforts. In spite of the fact we've just been looking at success and moral values and how people have success, but it's fleeting, so it's kind of negative, and there's almost no morals and values being shown in this book at all, so it's negative. We have a positive theme here, and so our author does stress the need for hopes and dreams. There is some positivity in this book. Matter of fact, he goes on to state that the failure of hopes and dreams and the failure of the American dream itself is unavoidable, not only because reality cannot keep up with ideals, but also because the ideals are in any case too fantastic to be realized. So even though it is a positive theme, you get the main character being naive, being impractical, and over-sentimental. It's this that makes him attempt the impossible. He thinks he can repeat the past. There are also a couple of motifs in this particular story. Now, as a reminder, motifs are recurring structures. They contrast things and literary devices that can help develop and inform the text's major themes. A lot of times when you look at motifs, they occur again and again to the point where as you're watching the movie or TV show or as you're reading along, you start questioning, why do I keep seeing this? Why does the character keep doing this? Why is this sound always here? Likely you are catching on to a motif. Well, one of the motifs is the geography of our story itself. Now, throughout the novel, places and settings epitomize the various aspects of 1920s American society. When we look at East Egg and West Egg, the people who live there represent the society itself. East Egg represents old aristocracy, old money, if you will. People who have inherited their money, people who have inherited titles, people who believe that they are the superior class in society. West Egg is the newly rich. They have as much money as the people in East Egg, but they're new money. They worked for their money, and therefore the people in East Egg do not think they're as good over in West Egg. Now, in between the eggs and New York City itself, there's a place called the Valley of the Ashes. And that is where you start seeing the moral and social decay of America. That is where we have our factories. That is where our transportation is usually stopping and starting. And so you're going to see a lot of pollution. It's not a very safe or a healthy place to be. And unfortunately, in the Valley of the Ashes, that is where your lower class society lives. They have to work in all of this every day, and therefore they have to live where they work. And so we also see in this particular story the social decay there, because that's where Tom picks up Myrtle Wilson, who he has an affair with, and that is also where we're going to see the death. New York City is the uninhibited amoral quest for money and pleasure. It is in real life, and therefore it was for F. Scott Fitzgerald, where anything can happen in New York City, the biggest city in the world at the time. And so when we are looking at our morals and values, there's nothing that you can't do in New York City in the 1920s. Now, the East is connected to the moral decay and social cynicism of New York. So we look at the geography of the United States, and the United States started on the eastern seaboard. So places like New York is going to be one of the oldest civilized places in America, and therefore it has overgrown, and it's going to have both your good and both your bad points of a city. Now, the West, including Midwestern and Northern areas, is connected to more traditional social values and ideals. So when Nick starts analyzing in the last chapter of the story, his relation reveals the sensitivity of this dichotomy. The story's set in the East, but he tells us that the story is really one of the West. All of your main characters are people who originally came from west of the Appalachians, and the reaction to their pace and style of life on the East Coast, they just weren't ready for the non-traditional values and social ideals. They are better suited, Nick believes, out west. And then the other major motif you're going to be wanting to look for is the weather. Now, the weather in The Great Gatsby unfailingly matches the emotional and narrative tone of the story. So Gatsby and Daisy's reunion begins just in a downpour, just this pouring rain is going on, and it provides, cover for the awkwardness that the two of them have after not seeing each other for several years. There's this absolute melancholy that they both seem to have as they realize they were in love, but now they should not be together. However, we leave them alone, and as Nick realizes when the rain goes away and the sun starts to shine again, as he walks in on them, he noticed that their love reawakened as the sun began to come out. Now, Gatsby's climactic confrontation with Tom in Chapter 7 occurs on the hottest day of the summer, under the scorching sun. We've made it into New York City, where it's nothing but pavement and huge buildings without air conditioning. And I mean, they're talking about, asking for an axe in order to cut open a new window in their hotel room. It's the hottest day of the summer, and so, of course, everybody, when they're hot, has a tendency to have lower tempers, and that's when we're going to have our fight. Now, Wilson kills Gatsby on the first day of autumn as Gatsby's floating in his pool, despite, they say, a palpable chill in the air. Gatsby's pool attendant wanted to drain the pool. He said that leaves were going to start falling in it, so there's a discernible chill in the air. Fall is coming. And that's a symbolic attempt to stop time and restore a relationship with Daisy to the way it was 5 years before in 1917. In that fall chill of the air, we see Gatsby die. Thanks so much for stopping by. For more information on The Great Gatsby, I hope you enjoyed the themes and the motifs. Let me know in the comments if you have found other ones. And of course, check out my playlist. I have gone through and summarized most of the chapters. I have an introduction. And if there's any other books you'd like to see me cover, please let me know in the comments. And as usual, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. Thanks for stopping by.